Returning home 2 hours later after parting with Sonia, Dennis intended to sneak unnoticed into his room and, despite the emptiness in his head and soul, force himself to open his notes. The first exam, which he had been preparing for a long time, was scheduled for tomorrow. But right now, he couldn't take it seriously. But at the doorstep, his aunt intercepted him. Valentina seemed to be puzzled by something. She made Dennis follow her to the kitchen and sat him down at the table. "Son," Valentina began with all seriousness, "we all understand age, hormones, and we're very happy that you and Sonia have become friends, but don't forget, studying is the most important thing." "All right, Aunt Val, let's go step by step." Dennis leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "First of all, who's that?" "We're your mother and I." "Ah, now I understand. And where did you get the idea that Sonia and I are friends? Were you hiding behind the bushes with binoculars?" "Well, at least you started joking. That's something." Valentina stretched a satisfied smile. "You see how well spending time with Sonia is influencing you. Stop attributing Sonia to me. I don't need her." "What do you mean you don't need her? And what about today, in the park? Sonia told us everything." "Interesting. What?" Dennis stared at his aunt without blinking. She hesitated and blushed. "Well, how? She said you kissed. For real." "Phew." He grabbed his head with both hands, tousled his hair, and rubbed his face. Then he looked at his aunt with a tortured expression and blurted out, "How can you all bother me so much? It happened by accident, and it won't happen again. Tell that to my mother. And as for you, Aunt Val, I didn't expect this from you. You yourself told her to leave me alone, that I'll decide for myself how to live and who to love." Dennis slammed his fist on the table and stood up. "Well, I'm not against it. Love all you want. Just that I can't bear to watch you suffer over that girl. Exams are around the corner and you lie there like you're lifeless. You're torturing yourself with hunger. My heart is bleeding." Tears welled up in Valentina's eyes. She hid her face in her hands and burst into tears. Dennis hesitated at the door. He paced a little. Then he returned and placed his trembling hands on his aunt's shoulders. "Well, Aunt Val," he said in a soothing voice, "calm down. Stop crying. I won't do it anymore, I promise. That's it. Enough from me. I won't force myself on you, and life doesn't end here. Don't worry, I'll pass the exams, become a surgeon. Do you hear? What do you have in the fridge?" "Soup," Valentina sobbed. "Mashed potatoes with meatballs." Dennis smiled and wearily plopped back onto the chair. Valia, on the other hand, jumped up and enthusiastically started arranging plates in front of him. After 2 days of fasting, Dennis's stomach growled mournfully at the sight of the abundance of homemade delicious food. He devoured everything, kissed the hospitable hostess, and finally started studying. He had to make an incredible effort to not think about Anna, to not remember her, to not indulge in false hopes. The loving, compassionate heart of the boy had turned into a stone. He didn't feel nervous before the exam. Confidence in his own abilities and cold calculation intertwined, allowing Dennis to easily answer all the questions. "Everything went well," Dennis simply said to his aunt, who rushed into the hallway as soon as he entered the house. He refused congratulations and honors, locked himself in his room, and covered himself with new notes. Dennis perfectly remembered the material, but he repeated it over and over like a broken record in order to push out all unnecessary thoughts from his brain. "Why don't you relax a bit?" Valentina suggested, placing a plate of dinner in front of him. Dennis nodded but didn't move from his spot. He sat there until it was dark. When the phone rang, Dennis straightened up. The muscles in his neck were stiff. He cracked it with a crunch and looked at the screen. Sonia was calling. Dennis didn't answer, even though he had plenty to say to that chatty, naive girl. But after a minute, when the phone rang again, he cursed loudly and grumbled into the receiver, "You have exactly 3 seconds. What do you want?" "Dennis," Sonia sniffled. She was flustered, trying to describe her problem in such a short time. I think I'm lost." Dennis leaned back in his chair and rubbed his forehead. This girl was getting on his nerves. "What do you mean, lost? Where are you?" I don't know. There's some house, a store. I'm at the store," Sonia explained incoherently. Her tongue stumbled, but not from nervousness. "Have you been drinking?" "A little bit," she sobbed into the phone like a little girl. "Dennis, please, come and get me. It's so dark here. I'm going to die of fear." "Found yourself a babysitter," Dennis grumbled. He jumped up from his seat and grabbed his backpack on the way out. "Can you at least send your location?" "I'll try. Dennis, please, just come as soon as you can. However it works out." He left the room and bumped into Aunt Valia, explaining casually with a smile, "I want to get some fresh air before bed." "Right. No need to stay inside 4 walls." Valentina nodded. If only she knew. If only his mother knew what kind of girl Sonia was.
She somehow ended up in the most remote and unfavorable area of the city. It took Dennis about an hour to reach her, and he found her near one of the entrances of a 5-story building, sitting on a bench.
Sonia sat hunched over like a little pea. A woman stood next to her, asking the same question over and over again. "Where do you live?" "I don't remember." Sonia shook her head and burst into tears again. In that very moment, Dennis's heavy hand rested on her shoulder, causing Sonia's back to bend even more. "It's okay," he reassured the woman. With a gesture, he made her step back. Then he sat next to Sonia. "Did you forget your address, or are you pretending?" "Me? Why would I pretend?" She slowly turned her head, confirming that it was indeed him, and pressed her forehead against his shoulder. "How good that you came. There, you answered your own question. We were celebrating the exam, somewhere around here." "Who? We?" "Friends. I met them at the institute, 3 girls and 2 boys, and one, he started bothering me." Sonia made a disgusted grimace. "He dragged me into the bedroom, but I managed to escape, and now I'm lost." "Well, you're stupid, Sonka," Dennis scolded her sternly. "You don't even know them, and you went and got drunk for some reason." "I got tired of being good. My parents kept me in a tight grip. They said a girl should be modest, decent. But in real life, it's not like that at all." Sonia pulled away from Dennis's shoulder and looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "People like me, no one likes them. I'm boring, uninteresting. You have to be loose, accessible, like your Anna. Don't nonsense. Am I not right? Not right? She got pregnant from who knows who, left you, and you still love her. Is that fair?" Sonia dug her phone out of her bag and handed it to Dennis. "Here, call your precious. Breathe into the receiver. Cry. Maybe after that, she'll feel sorry for you." "Enough." Dennis looked at the phone, remembered the promise he had made to himself, and put it back in his bag. "Get it through your head. Never again. Never. You won't even say her name in my presence. Do you understand?" Sonia blinked her eyes rapidly and quickly nodded her head. "She's gone. That's it. Right now, the only thing that matters to me," Dennis glanced at Sonia and grinned, "is how to get your body home. Public transportation isn't running anymore, and I haven't earned enough money for a taxi." "I don't have any money either. I gave everything to the guys," she giggled. But when she saw Dennis's stern gaze, she immediately fell silent. "We'll have to walk." With his help, Sonia stood up from the bench. He had to hold her waist with one hand and press her tightly against him. Sonia was so thin and light. Through the thin fabric of her dress, it was easy to count her ribs. They slowly made their way along the street. Sonia leaned into his side and breathed in the scent of his cologne with delight. "Danya." "Yes, what?" "Will you tell my parents that I got drunk?" "I won't." "And Auntie?" "No." A smile spread wider across her face. "Danya, will you talk to that guy and tell him to stop bothering me?" "I will." "Then yesterday wasn't our last meeting. It turns out today as well." Sonia sweetly sighed and wrapped her arms around Dennis's torso. "You can't escape fate, my little Danya. Sooner or later it will catch up with you, whether you want it to or not."